You're my soul.
Alright, so today we're going to talk about the differences between a 2 and 4-stroke paramotor. I've made 11 different categories to rank these two motors in, many of which were suggested by you guys. And at the end, I'm going to answer the much anticipated question: if I had to choose one of these, which would I choose? And which motor will I be flying going forward from here? If you guys haven't been tuned in recently, I'm actually giving away this paramotor on the right. This is an EOS Quattro 4-stroke paramotor. It's on a Fly Products rider frame. If you haven't gotten entered to win yet, all you have to do is visit the first link in the description, pick out one of our brand new 3 designs. You can get it on a hoodie, a t-shirt, or a sticker. Make a purchase, and every $5 spent on the web store gets you 1 entry to win this paramotor up until January 10th. And a little special bonus for today and today only, I'm throwing in a brand new GoPro 13 to 1 random order that gets placed today. I'll place this right here as a reminder throughout the video, but when the video is over, be sure you get entered to win. All right, our first category is going to be cost. Between these two engines, I'm going to call it a draw. However, I will say that the 2-stroke wins in upfront cost and the 4-stroke wins in terms of long-term cost. So if we break it down, if you were to just buy this engine, the 4-stroke, in the pull start version, it would cost you $4,250 or $4,650 for the dual start, which is what I have here, the electric and pull start. The standard 2-stroke Moster is going to cost you $3,070 for the pull start or $3,350 for the dual start. This specific engine is a 2-stroke factory R. It's the kind of tuned up version. This is going to run you $4,740. So direct comparison, 2-stroke versus 4-stroke, the 4-stroke is a little bit more pricey in the beginning. Another way you can look at it is if you were to buy this Fly Products rider frame, the markup is going to be $1,300 to go from your standard 2-stroke to your standard 4-stroke. So realistically, with the installation, it's going to be $1,300 more to go 4-stroke on this frame. However, if you look at the long term, the 4-stroke is going to have the edge. The rebuild on the 4-stroke is going to be about 500 hours versus 150 hours on the 2-stroke. Really, it depends on how long you're going to keep the engine, so that's why I called it a draw. Our next category is warranty, and for this category, the 2-stroke wins. The standard Moster 2-stroke comes with a 2-year or 150-hour warranty, which is a damn good warranty. The EOS Quattro 4-stroke comes with a 1-year warranty. So in the end, the 2-stroke has the edge. Our next category is weight, and the 2-stroke wins again. These two paramotors, as you see them, the 2-stroke weighs 69 pounds, the 4-stroke weighs 86 pounds. I would say this is a substantial difference. It's going to determine what type of pilots can even foot launch these two motors. If you're a smaller person, 150 pounds or less, you're really going to want the lightweight 2-stroke over the heavier 4-stroke. Our next category is sound, and for this, the 4-stroke wins. Both of these motors at cruise power from the seat while you're flying in the air. The 4-stroke is the clear winner. You guys can tell in my narration tracks, you can hear my voice so much better on the 4-stroke versus the 2-stroke. I think at full power, the engines sound about the same. They're different tones, but the loudness, intensity level is pretty similar. And I think that's because a lot of the sound actually just comes from the propellers. Listening to these two engines from the ground, the 4-stroke has a much more pleasant sound to it. It sounds more like an airplane. It has a deeper growl and rumble to it. The 2-stroke sounds a little tinny, higher pitched, and I think is a little bit less pleasant to people on the ground. Our next category is reliability, and I'm going to give the win to the 4-stroke. Here's the thing though. Hypothetically, the 4-stroke is going to be the more reliable option just because 4-strokes in general should be more reliable. The catch is that the 2-stroke Moster has been out for many years. and it's earned its own reliability in time. This 4-stroke, however, is a newcomer to the game, and it's going to take time for it to prove itself. So that's why I say theoretically this should be better, but I know that there have been some slight issues with it just being a new engine on the market. There's just a few kinks to work out over time. Our next category is power, and I'm going to say the 4-stroke wins by a smidge. The EOS Quattro 4-stroke is rated for 30.2 horsepower. The standard Moster 2-stroke is rated for 25 horsepower, and this model I have here, the Factory R, is rated for 27 horsepower. Unfortunately, I don't have access to a thrust table to put these two motors back to back. I can tell you though, while running them up on the ground, the 4-stroke feels like it has more top-end power. But here's the catch. I did some tests in terms of climb rate. What I did was I took both of these two motors, fueled to the same level, and I flew from 0 feet on the ground all the way up to 1,000 feet. And I timed it 3 different times. And I was very surprised to see that the 2-stroke actually beat the 4-stroke by a little bit. They were very, very close, but the 2-stroke had the edge, and I think that's actually because the 2-stroke weighs less. So although the 4-stroke might have a little bit more top-end power, it's held back by its weight. Our next category is tuning, and I'm going to give the win to the 2-stroke. The 2-stroke Moster uses a diaphragm type carburetor, so all you have to do to tune it is have a little miniature screwdriver and you can adjust the needle valves. The 4-stroke though uses a float bowl type carburetor, which in order to tune it you have to use different jets and different needle positioning, which requires actually taking apart the carburetor, unscrewing a jet and screwing a new jet in. Our next category is fuel burn, and the winner goes to the 4-stroke by a landslide. In the manual, this 4-stroke claims 2.2 to 2.8 liters per hour. That's at a steady cruise RPM. This 2-stroke claims 3 liters per hour at their steady cruise RPM. I've found in my personal experience, if I'm just flying casually, climbing, descending, doing some wing overs, doing some slalom turns, my average on the 2-stroke is about 4 liters per hour, and so far I've found the same flying style on the 4-stroke gets me about 3 liters per hour. So if you're someone that values fuel economy, maybe you're big into cross country and you don't want to burn a lot of fuel, the 4-stroke is going to be significantly more efficient. The next category is maintenance, and I give the win to the 4-stroke. If we break it down in terms of parts availability, both of these engines do have suppliers in the US that keep parts in stock. Everyone knows Sky Sports with the Moster, they have every single part in stock, and they're literally like the Amazon of paramotors. You place an order and it gets shipped same day as long as it's before 5 o'clock. That's a big deal to have that type of service to keep you in the air. I've found that the EOS Quattro importer, Hampton Roads Paramotor, they do keep the parts in stock for this engine. That's a big deal for this engine, and I really hope that their service lives up to the Sky Sports experience. When we get into the actual physical maintenance that you have to do, so far in this engine, I've only had to do the post break-in maintenance, which is the oil change, the valve clearance, and the belt tension. My experience with that so far, tensioning the belt, was just as similar as doing it on the 2-stroke. The oil change on this engine is actually very simple. There's an easily accessible drain at the bottom, there's an easy accessible fill, and then you simply fill it to the level of the window. You can really do an oil change on this motor in about 10 minutes. The valve clearance was a little bit more tricky though. I think their execution of ease of doing it is as good as it gets. All you have to do is pop off the head, then you pop off 2 side covers to access the intake and exhaust valves. Then you come in with your gapping device, your feeler gauges, and you can check the clearance. Now, in order to adjust the clearance, you just have to loosen a little nut, set the depth with your screw, and then tighten the nut up again. This isn't a hard process, but you do have to be a little bit mechanically inclined and you have to understand how to do it. I would say adjusting the valve clearance on this engine is more like a 30-minute job. It can get a little bit messy as some oil spills out the head. As far as the maintenance on a 2-stroke, there's objectively less moving parts on the 2-stroke. It's a simpler engine. I think it's a little bit easier to work on. However, here's the big difference. If you were to follow both of the manual recommended maintenance schedules for either of these 2 engines, here's how it would go. On the 4-stroke, every 25 hours they want an oil change, a belt check, and a valve clearance check. Every 50 hours, you replace the air filter and spark plug and grease the exhaust. Every 100 hours, you replace the engine vent valve, engine mounts, exhaust mounts, oil cooler mounts, the drive belt, and fuel filter. It's not until every 500 hours that they call for an overhaul, and they just say to get in touch with EOS on how to do that. I wish there were more details on the overhaul, like the cost and the parts involved in the overhaul, but the big deal is you don't have to do it until 500 hours. The two-stroke, on the other hand, if you were to follow the manual, every 25 hours you have to replace the spark plug and the airbox snap lock. Every 50 hours, you have to replace the exhaust bushings. Every 100 hours, you have to replace the carb membranes, the airbox sponge and sleeve, the pull starter, the gaskets for the cylinder, carb, reed valve, exhaust, the head O-ring, and the silencer gaskets, and you have to replace the belt. Then every 150 hours, you have to replace the spark plug connector, the reed valves, the exhaust manifold with spring, the silencer material, the silencer rubber, the piston roller bearings, the rubber mounts, the oil seal carter case, the crankshaft bearing, the reduction bearings, and the clutch. That is a lot of parts for the 150-hour maintenance, and it requires taking the engine apart to get to those bearings. Now, that being said, I think the majority of people don't follow these schedules to a T, and they'll basically run their two-stroke until they encounter an issue, and then they'll do the maintenance. But if we're going by the book, the amount of parts you have to do at 150 hours versus 500 hours, the clear winner is the four-stroke. Our next category is portability, which is something I really never thought about, but some of you guys asked for. I give the win to the two-stroke. Here's why. I think they're both really the same footprint if you're to break them down and try to ship them or travel with them overseas. However, the four-stroke needs the oil drained from the crankcase. And then if you're shipping it overseas, you have to also bring oil to refill it. The two-stroke, you just need to find two-stroke oil wherever you're going. The four-stroke is heavier, and for shipping, that's going to make a difference, but also just loading it up in your truck to go to the field and back. With this engine being significantly heavier, it is a bit harder to load into your truck. For that, I give the portability win to the two-stroke. So our final topic is going to be flyability or general usability, and I give the win to the two-stroke. If we break that down and we look at oil mixing, the four-stroke is super nice that you don't have to mix oil into your gas. You can just pour straight gasoline into the fuel tank. Makes life easy, but the two-stroke, you don't have to do oil changes. If we look at ease of starting, you guys may know I did have some trouble with the four-stroke getting it dialed in initially, but I learned a few things. The four-stroke actually has this feature where when you pump the throttle, it injects fuel directly into the carburetor. So what I found is you don't need to choke this engine unless it's like really cold outside. So right now I haven't been choking it, which means you don't have to take it off your back and take the choke off again. I give it a few pumps of gas and it normally starts right up. And I've also done the same process for the hot starts, and I've gotten this motor pretty well dialed in to the point where I would say that they're both on the same level of priming and starting. Next for flyability is the weight, or more specifically the power to weight ratio. The two-stroke has the clear advantage in this as far as flyability. When I flew these two motors back to back, I don't struggle with 86 pounds on my back personally as about a 170 pound guy. But when I put 69 pounds on my back, the difference was very noticeable and it felt much better in the air in terms of the power to weight ratio. In terms of the power band, there's a big difference. The two-stroke has a pretty peaky power band where just above cruise, you get a pretty quick spike in RPM. This can be nice sometimes when you just need to gas it real quick, but it can also make intricate moves like foot dragging a little bit more difficult. The four-stroke is extremely linear throughout the whole throttle band, which makes greasing trike landing super easy. In terms of vibration, I say they're about the same. In the air, you don't really notice any crazy vibrations between the two of them. The four-stroke feels like it spins at a slower RPM for cruise, but at idle, you guys may notice that the engine does shake quite a bit. Throttle response, I would say that the four-stroke has a slight edge, and I only say that because this one is running a heavier prop and it still has a crazy amount of throttle response, where this two-stroke is spinning a lightweight prop and it has a really good throttle response. So if you guys have been keeping track, that was exactly 6 points for the four-stroke and 6 points for the two-stroke. Pretty crazy. I ended up with a straight draw between the two. But at the end of the day, there is no perfect paramotor, there is no perfect engine. It really comes down to what features you value most. A lot of people wanted to know if I had to choose between these two paramotors to fly one of them for the rest of my life, and I could only have one, which one would I choose? Again, at the end of the day, both of these engines succeed in their own specific categories, but what I value most, I would choose the two-stroke. While I do love the fuel economy and the longer maintenance life and just the sound of the four-stroke, I can't give up that power to weight ratio that the two-stroke has. My flying style is more aggressive, flying smaller slalom gliders, doing big slalom turns and aerobatics, and for that, the two-stroke still performs the best. If I was an older guy and I just like going out and doing cross-country and sightseeing and none of the crazy stuff, I think the clear winner would be the four-stroke. Anyway, that's all I have for the comparison between these two engines. The sun has set as we film this. Now that we're at the end of the video, I have to remind you guys to get entered to win the four-stroke, and if you place an order today, you might just find a brand new GoPro 13 in your order. Be sure to check out the web store, first link in the description. Get your order placed for something like this Polaroid shirt I'm wearing right now. One of you guys is gonna get insanely lucky and have this four-stroke engine to go fly around the skies with. Hope you guys enjoyed. Till the next one, have fun, fly safe, peace.